Hey guys, welcome back here to Intuitive Angling, and appreciate you guys checking out today's episode and hanging with me a little bit. Guys, I have got a really good summertime lure I want to share with you all that will catch fish probably better than about anything once you're fishing and you find a school of fish in a little bit deeper water. This particular bait I'm talking about, which is going to be the Tush Rig Spark Shad, I'll show you guys how to set it up. This is a great bait for maximizing areas that the fish school on. In other words, let's say, for example, you're fishing out off a point or something like that, and you're catching some fish on a crankbait or a football head jig or something. There's not a better lure than this Spark Shad on the Tush head to mop up and catch every fish out of that school. So we're going to give you guys some tips and advice on how to rig it and set it up today in the episode. And also, guys, I will put the Tush head. This is the Tush head we're going to be talking about. This is the 1/2 ounce Tush head by Core Tackle with a 7/0 hook. That's what you want in it. I'll put this in my Tackle Warehouse link in the description. You guys can order them through my link there. And also, I'll put the Swimbait we're using, which is a 5-inch Megabass Spark Shad. This is the Swimbait you want for it. This is the great combo. Both of these I'll link in my Tackle Warehouse link in the description of this video. So really appreciate that. Okay, guys, if you haven't seen it, this is the Tush Rig. Now, the cool thing about the Tush Rig is you have lead that goes down the shank of the hook here, made by Core Tackle, my buddy Johnny Schultz and Matt Steffen. Most jig heads that you rig a swimbait with just have a head on the end of it. It's, you know, just a real big visible head, which causes the swimbait to drop like this. Now, the point of the Tush Rig, where you got the lead on the shank here, it gives it a little bit more of a horizontal fall when it's falling, which is a lot more lifelike presentation, especially like when you lift it up. I'll show you after I rig it here. But it's the fall on these Tush heads that make all the difference as far as generating the strikes. Okay, so what you want here, this is a big bait. This is the 5-inch Megabass Spark Shad. It's a big hunking thick piece of plastic. That's why you need to have the big 7/0 hook here, like it's in the Tush Rig here. So you just want to come through. And it's very important, guys. This is one of the most important things about this process is when you rig this bait, you have got to get it perfectly through the center. Because if you don't, it's not going to run right. It's going to sort of run off to the side. So get it where you come out perfectly through the center like that. And then you're going to push the lead all the way through the jig head to where you got the hook like that. Okay, now look at the way that looks there, guys. With the Tush head, you have all of your weight internally in the swim bait there. Most of the, swim baits that you use, you got a big ball head or a big fish looking head there, which is a strike detractor. But here, you don't have any lead on it. And this lead coming back on the shank of the body here, like I said, when it drops, it's going to drop more of an angle like this. And when you pull it up off the bottom, it's not just going to drop straight down like that. It's a much more natural, lifelike presentation when you're reeling it along the bottom like that. So anyway, guys, this is a big bait here. So what I'm rigging it on is I fish this on my flipping stick. I'll rig it up, get it set up here for you. The flipping stick, a lot of people don't associate a flipping stick with throwing a swim bait, but this is really what you want on here. A couple different reasons with it, because first of all, I like to throw heavy line on this. This is a big bait, so I use it on 20 to 25 pound test Seaguar and Vizex fluorocarbon line. Straight fluorocarbon, you can get by with 20-pound test on it. And the flipping stick, a couple different reasons why I use the flipping stick on it. First of all, you're fishing deeper water, so you can make a longer cast. So say, for example, you're fishing out off ledges or something like that, you can chunk this thing 1.5 miles with the flipping stick and get it way out there. And the advantage of that is by getting it way out there like that, you have it in the strike zone longer. And then let's say, for example, you make a long cast with it and you get a strike on the thing. The flipping stick will allow you to take up a lot of line on the hook set. So let's say, for example, you casted it way out there and you got like a 70-foot cast that's out there in 20 foot of water. There's a lot of slack in any type of line unless you're using straight braided line in that long of a cast and that deep of water. And the flipping stick will allow you to get some really good penetration with this big hook, because this is a big honking hook and you have to move it a little bit to get it in the fish's mouth. So that's why I use it. I got the Megabass Alcleys flipping stick, Cast King ALTI Elite bait casting reel with it, 20-pound test Seaguar and Vizex fluorocarbon line. Now, basically how you want to fish it is, like I said, I'll talk a little bit about the areas in a second, but I just cast it out there, you know, let it go to the bottom, and then I'm going to put my rod tip, you know, down to the water, and I'm just going to slowly crank it like that. And what the thing is I want the bait to be in contact with the bottom. So I'll crank it for 5 or 6 times. And after you crank it for 5 or 6 times, the bait is it's gonna start out on the bottom. And after you crank it for 5 or 6 times, it's slowly gonna come off the bottom like that. Once I lose contact with the bottom, I stop reeling, I let it fall back down until it hits the bottom, and I start the same process. So in other words, the bait is it's staying probably 4 to 6 inches off the bottom the whole time where those fish are on the hard structure areas. And a lot of times when you get a bite, it's just weight on there. It's just like you're reeling it, and all of a sudden you just feel like you sort of lose contact with the bait. And at that point, the fish has come up and sucked it in. Now, a couple quick modifications I want to show you here before I talk a little bit about the areas is I do like to make one little modification with it on the spark shad. Now, the spark shad comes in a bunch of different colors, any of the shad pattern, but all the spark shads, you got like a color separation on the top. I like to take a little bit of chartreuse marker and I go down that color separation. So it gives a little bit of color like that. And then also I'll put just a little bitty puff of chartreuse on the tail here. Just gives just a little bit of color like that. And when it comes through the water, it just seems like that gives me more strikes, that just that little bit of chartreuse in there like that. Really good looking bait in the water. I've caught a lot of good fish on that spark shad. I've caught a bunch of good fish on the spark shad in Florida, guys, just fishing it on a weedless hook over the grass. It's a really good bait. So that's the setup and how I rig it. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about, you know, where you want to fish it. You know, this is a hard structure type of a deal. So when I'm talking about hard structure, I'm talking about you're fishing it on ledges, on drop-offs, out off deeper points, that type of thing. In my part of the country, you know, we don't really have ledges and drop-offs. We have points that go out into the water and drop off, and you may have an occasional drop-off here or there, but for the most part, if you're fishing a man-made impoundment, you're going to be fishing points with it. This time of year, I like to fish main lake and secondary points. It could be gravel, clay, rock, whatever, but I do like a little bit flatter point. I don't want it to get it on like a real steep point. I want a point that comes out of way, and I'm really trying to target sort of that 10 to 20 foot zone, just depending upon how clear the water is. The water visibility is like under 2 foot. I'm targeting more that 10 foot zone on the points. If the water visibility is over 3 feet in clarity, I could go down to 20, 25 feet. I don't really go down over 25 foot in the summer because the thermocline starts to form a little bit. There's not that many fish deeper. But if you're in a TVA lake, some type of a river lake, this is a great bait to fish on ledges and drop-offs. I mean, creek channel intersections, all you guys that fish Gunnersville, Chickamauga, Pickwick, you know, Wheeler, all those type of lakes, get out there on those ditches and those channel drops out there. It's a great bait to fish it. And the thing that is really good about this swim bait, this is where it excels. It's a subtle bait. It doesn't make any noise, so it's a great mop-up lure. So let's say, for example, you pull up on a point and you catch a couple on a big crankbait, or you got a big flutter spoon, you catch a couple on it, or hair jig, or big worm, or a football head jig, or something like that. The swim bait will mop all that up. If they stop biting your bigger aggressive baits, that swim bait will catch the least aggressive fish, and it also catches big ones. I mean, if they're biting it real good, I mean, I'll start out with it right off the bat in the morning. I won't even go to anything else, but I've caught a lot of good fish on them, guys. I've caught a lot of good fish here in my part of the country on it. I've done really good at Kentucky Lake on the things before, Lake Chickamauga, but anywhere that you've got summer hard structure, they work. So anyway, guys, I'll put them in the link in the description. The like I said, the cord, here. Yeah, I'll put the Tush Rig and the Spark Shad and my Tackle Warehouse link in the description of this video if you guys would like to pick a few up, and hope it helps you guys catch some good ones. We'll talk later.